Hi, my name is Jatin Bhadra, and this is going to be a quick lightning talk about Maven and continuous delivery. Really, it's all about Maven snapshots and the challenge that we have by using Maven snapshots and also trying to follow continuous delivery for application build and deployment process. Oops.
That really was quick.
So, just to set the scene, what we have got bunch of web modules, around 6 web modules as of now, would go up to 10 or 12 web modules to get the whole application going. There are a bunch of common jars that these web modules use, around 20 odd common jars. The common jars and the web modules are kind of developed by the same team. However, they are packaged as a common jar because they have got to be deployed into various web modules. Our CD build process is pretty much automated, whereby on every commit a build gets triggered at very high level. The build's job is to quality check the application, to run the test suites, package the application, and then to deploy the application into an environment. This is like our development environment. We don't have like automatic deployment into QA environment or stuff like that. From then on, it is automated, but it has to be, somebody has to press the button according to the plan. And the common artifacts obviously get published into the Maven repository. So the challenge or the requirement that we have is all those common jars that are built at the initial stage of development. Every web module or the development team that is building that web module wants to pick up the latest version of the common jar. They don't want to have to even manage the POM file. So that is kind of classic case of using snapshots, really, where you just use snapshot, you define snapshot as a dependency, and the latest version of snapshot gets used by your web module. However, since we are following continuous delivery principles, every build that we do could be potential build that could go in higher environments, possibly up until production. And we don't want to put a production EER file or a WAR file in this case with a snapshot jar in it, because there is no tracking back to what source code had resulted in that snapshot jar. So the solution that we have put in place right now is not to use snapshot at all. For those common jars, we do, I don't know whether it's the right term, but we do automatic versioning or dynamic versioning of those common jars for every build. How is that achieved? Is in the POM file, where we used to use snapshot for the common jar, is replaced by a variable called revision. The value of that variable will be the SVN repository revision number that built that jar. And now you have a release created for that common jar, which will be of version 1. We have changed it slightly. It is now 10.revision. So it is going to be 1020, 1041, 1000, whatever is the repository revision number that resulted out of the source code. Now, when the web module wants to use the latest version of the jar, which is what they want at the initial stages of development, rather than specifying a fixed version range is specified. That is the last line, where version range from 100 to 200 is specified in the POM file of the web module, and is going to pick the latest jar that was built. When branching is required, which in our case for app support, once the release goes into production, a branch is cut off for app support team to continue supporting the branch. The development team can bump up the version of their common jars in whichever they want to make changes to 20-revision, which means that the build that are done over here do not affect the builds that are done by the app support team. We still have a slight problem with this solution, whereby for local developments where a developer is making a change to the common jar file, if he produces a snapshot build out of that and publishes to his local repo, and in case he wants to do further integration testing by using that jar file in the web module that he is developing himself, then that dependency is not going to resolve to the snapshot jar because there is a release jar available. That was quick. So, any questions, thoughts, suggestions?
So when you when you build out the module and it picks up the common module, the resultant code, how do you know which revision was picked up from your range?
So the jar file name itself has got the revision number in it. So the jar file name will be like 10 dot whatever is the repository revision number.
Does that then get committed to subversion of the main module calling that? Or
No.
You do it manually.
So the POM file doesn't get resolved into, the POM file will always have range in it.
Yeah.
Only the resultant var file's content will have the versioned jar in
you
it.
go into the war and then you see the version.
So if there is an issue, then you go in the war, see which version it is, and you can then backtrack the source code that resulted in this. Also, we had this challenge where at one point we had a dedicated team that was building a caching solution, and they used to publish the client jar out as a snapshot jar, and the teams used to consume that snapshot jar, but their build, by the time it reached into higher environments, there will be a new version of snapshot available, and there was a communication gap between two teams which were saying, hey, my snapshot works, how does your not work? So let's look at the date timestamp, and that's not the best way to resolve which version of jar file is being used. Any other questions?
So why not fix the version, the dependencies? So I mean, I know that you will have to probably rebuild a bit more of it, but then you can have explicitly rebuild what you are actually deploying. Or without that, you just hope that your dependency still looks like that it's compatible.
So this is just reducing the overhead that somebody would have to keep updating the POM file in the Maven version.
That can be automated pretty easily. I would say that you know that, okay, actually I'm looking for the latest version of the given version. I just regenerate the dependencies and create it. That would reduce even less the overhead, because then you know that you're looking at one version. You see the whole dependency chain.
Right.
Plus, you rely on subversion being a linear numbering. What if you use Git?
That's true.
That's not in your reason. That's just a side note. But
Yeah.
You have branches. You have parallel builds.
I think I'm going to look into that in a bit more detail. Of actually automating the POM file that is generating the common jar is probably simpler. However, if I don't use the range, then automating all the web modules that need to be dependent on this would be a little bit more of effort.
On the other hand, you are now hiding the truth. By saying that, okay, actually, I'm depending on some future version, because when you're specifying a range, that's what you're saying, and you're hiding the fact that you don't know what you're depending on.
The idea is that if we are disciplined enough, then once we reach the stability, the range goes away and fixed versions come in.
Do you have problems with that, or you plan to do that, or?
Right now, there are no problems that I've seen. There are like, there are side problems, and because the team is kind of getting used to it, although the solution has been in place for last 4 months, the team is getting used to it, and any side problems that they have, they think that that's related to the range that they are using rather than something else.
Okay.
So what about your common components? An issue we've come across is guaranteeing backwards compatibility. So if you want to be releasing new versions of components, so do you have enough testing in place to be able to release continuously? Is this why you're kind of looking at ranges and versions and you're worried about that, because you can't release continuously because of these gaps and you're confident in testing those components?
We need to build more of that. We do have decent amount of test coverage right now, but I don't think it's of sufficient quality. It's like one of those metrics challenges where you meet the metrics, but whether the quality of those test cases is actually good.
Not necessarily the quality of the test cases. I'm more worried about things like compatibility, backwards efforts, and compatibility. Big issues when you've got this kind of thing going on with things.
Hmm.
And there's a version set.
Yeah. Yeah.
Entirely functional.
Is that built through Jenkins or a similar tool?
This is built through TeamCity.
How does do the common modules then kick off the builds for the main modules? Or do they cascade down?
No, that chain doesn't have interdependency. So common module gets built, and if there is any source code change in the main module, then that gets built.
How many different teams are using the common module?
So there are two teams really who are developing the web modules, and those are the teams that do develop the common modules as well, and they themselves are the consumers of their common modules.
So it's not a huge like 10, 15 different teams kind of using the same.
No.
Is it both teams maintaining all the common modules, or is it one team have one set of common modules and the other team?
Right now, one team has one set of common modules, another has another set of common modules. However, I can see an overlap happening very soon.
So you spoke about the revision being the SVN build number. The remainder of the total build number, if you will, the full fix, does that follow semantic versioning, or how do you do your version for the rest of it?
That follows semantic versioning, yes.
How often do you get broken builds?
Sorry?
How often do you have broken builds? At the web module, when you integrate testing.
I mean, our build pipeline is broken into various steps.
Broken
So
permanently? No.
and honestly, like for it to start with, it was great, but some of the steps have been broken for some time now. Like, full regression, not full, like the however much regression test coverage we have with using Fitneys, that step has been broken for some time.
What was the trickiest part of migrating from the old way to the new way?
I think educating people, educating everyone that this is how it's supposed to work, which we have tried to do, but we haven't got there yet. The other thing was that we kind of started with this by using hyphen revision, which is wrong. It is better to have the third digit, because Maven from that digit onwards doesn't really treat the digits as numeric. It kind of looks for that as something which is alphanumeric, which means your 20 can be less than 2 and stuff like that can happen. So that is the tricky one.
This is Maven talking.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Just one last question.
Sure.
Is this change, this move, did that come from specific problems and issues that you were trying to resolve, and you kind of had an idea of what the benefits were going to be of these in advance, or is it kind of like, well, look, everybody else is doing this, is something we should look at because it's bound to be great?
So this, it came from my perspective that I wanted to know what source code is building the artifacts. B, the developers were having this challenge. As I said, there was a common team that was developing caching solution, and they didn't really know a way to communicate back to the development team that, hey, this is the fixed version of the caching solution jar. So they didn't really have the problems, they didn't have a solution, and they didn't really think of this as a problem either. They just thought that this is how it's meant to be, we just have to live with it. So yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.